Welcome to Story Time with Megan Fox. I have the pleasure of interviewing today an indie author. Her name is Marina Fontaine, and she has written a book that I just got finished reading and I couldn't put down. It's called Chasing Freedom, and it is a dystopian fiction novel. Marina is also the founder, or one of the founders, of the Conservative Libertarian Fiction Alliance, which is a group of indie authors who have conservative or libertarian views and advance freedom through their writing. And so I am really proud to have Marina with us today. Marina, thank you so much for coming on. And please tell us a little bit about your book, Chasing Freedom. I'm going to actually put it up on the screen so that people can see the cover. In fact, why don't we talk about the cover for a minute? And who did your cover design?
Actually, it's one of the members of the Conservative Libertarian Fiction Alliance. His name is James Short. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And he's done a really great job. We really kind of messed around to position everything correctly to convey just everything I wanted to convey in this cover. He did a great job.
Well, it's funny if James Short did that. He did the editing for my ebook as well. So he did the formatting for me for my ebook. So he's very talented, and it's great. The Conservative Libertarian Fiction Alliance that you started has brought together so many people with lots of different talents who help one another out to publish and do this indie publishing now that Amazon makes so freely available to new authors, which is really fantastic. And so it's really a great place for people to get all these new ideas and people to come together and really crowdsource what they need. I have my own cover designer is on there too, Kia Hebe, who's also an author, and she's fantastic. So tell me, Marina, about one of the things that I liked about your book is that you personally are from a totalitarian country. And I think that, like Ayn Rand, you have a unique perspective on what totalitarian government is and what it does and what it can be. Where you were from, would you tell us a little bit about where you're from and how that influences your writing?
Yeah, I grew up in the Soviet Union. We came over when I was 19, almost 20, so I had a good time there to understand, to see how the society worked. And I tried to definitely show everything that I know about kind of the inner workings of totalitarianism and the effect it has on different people, because it's hard to see some of it from the outside, because we know about, I'm sure in the States you've heard about the dissidents and you heard about the protesters, and you saw everything from the outside, but the effect it has on ordinary people, you kind of have to be there, and you kind of have to see the choices that people have to make on a daily basis and how they cope and how it affects just everyday relationships and everyday lives. When you have to think about little things like where do you get your produce and where do you get your food and who you can talk to and who you can trust, and some of the decisions you have to make about your job, like sometimes you have to compromise your principles because you want to keep your job and you have to be in good standing with the government, and you can't really tell everybody what you think. So I tried to put, that's really why I try to cover so many characters from different walks of life to give a full picture of the society.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was going to ask you. I generally, sometimes I have a hard time following novels that have a lot of characters, although I felt that your characters, it wasn't overwhelming, but there were many characters in them. But I found each one of them to be interesting and having their own story and to tell. one of the most interesting things about your book, in my opinion, was that it is about revolution, but it's about a non-violent revolution. I don't want to give too much of it away, but it doesn't quite go down the road that you think it might go down. And so because of that, I just thought that was an interesting way to go. And was there a reason why you decided not to write a full-out war?
I wanted to do something different because I wanted to have kind of a uniquely American dystopia, if you will. So I have characters who, even though they all grew up already under an oppressive society, it's still an American environment. They still have some remnants of American morality. They may not be religious, but they at least have that basis of respect for life that may be missing a little bit when you talk about Europe. I think, at least in my view of American society, even if, God forbid, we ever go down the path of oppression, I believe that a lot of this basic morality and humanity and respect for life will always remain. That's why my characters, even when they're in tough situations and have to make difficult decisions, they always try to err on the side of preserving life.
And I liked that very much, actually. I thought that was very different and admirable. And I thought it really surprised me also. Tell us, just in general, what is this book about for someone who hasn't read it or doesn't know what a dystopia is? You know, this is a very increasingly popular genre of dystopian novels. Could you just tell the audience, what is your book about, and you know, what is this genre that you are writing?
Right. Dystopia is basically a way to show a society gone wrong. And there are many versions of it. Obviously, 1984 is kind of, when people think of dystopia, they think of 1984. But lately, there has been a proliferation of dystopias of different kinds, and some of them become really, really dark, with a society that has completely fallen apart. A lot of them are made more to scare us without so much as showing any way out, which is another thing I was trying to do in my story, to not just scare us, because I really think at this point, a lot of us who are paying attention have been scared enough. But I also wanted...
That's so true. That is so true. Oh, yes, I've been scared enough.
I also wanted to see that there is a way out under the right circumstances, and that is the way I structured my book. It's a realistic dystopia. It's basically, I like to call it, it's our world only worse. It's only a few decades into the future. It begins in 2040 and goes for almost 2 decades from there. And our characters start as teenagers, and then they grow up and things happen in their lives. But I really try to show the progress of both the people growing up and maturing, and the challenges that they have to face, not just as revolutionaries and the rebels, but also as human beings, because no matter how dystopian the world, people will still live and love and laugh and find little moments of joy, which is another thing that I believe is a little bit different from most other dystopias, where you just see the revolution and you see sometimes they stick a romance on the side just because it's kind of required, especially when it's young adult. But I wanted to delve a little bit more into what it's really like to live that life.
I think, one of the things that I do is I review books for young adults, and I talk to parents about what's in the books that, are out there right now. I would like to say that if you do have any young adults in your house, teenagers or whatever, who like Hunger Games and books like that, Chasing Freedom is a perfectly appropriate book for the young adult set. It is not technically a young adult book, but it certainly could have interest to young adults. There is nothing inappropriate in this book. There is nothing obscene or upsetting, other than some violence, but the violence is pretty tame, I'd say. I mean, it's pretty usual. I don't think it's anything worse than Hunger Games. But I definitely think that, like Kia Hebe's book that she wrote, Domino, which I believe also should be required reading in high schools everywhere. It's such a great book. And even though she didn't write it for a young adult set either, it has definite interest. And I think yours does too. I would definitely, I would recommend this for young readers. And I also think that, like 1984 or Brave New World, these are books that your book is one that could start a lot of really good conversations in a high school classroom for young students to really think about what is politics and what does it do to your everyday life, and how do these decisions affect the future. So I really enjoyed it. I had a hard time putting it down. I really enjoyed your book very much, Marina. What was your inspiration for writing it?
That's a good question. It actually started as a flash fiction contest at Liberty Island. There was a column a few years ago that I guess Maureen Dowd from New York Times was trying to write, I guess, something like a satirical fiction about what would happen if the Tea Partiers got their way, and basically had like zombies running around Washington because the healthcare got defunded. And it was just ridiculously old.
Leave it to Maureen Dowd to write something ridiculous like that. I think I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, she's a good, as a liberal columnist, she can actually be good and funny, but it was just something so ridiculous that the folks of Liberty Island just said, okay, can you write better than Maureen Dowd? And, I laughed about it because I did not, until then, I wrote nothing at all. But it just kind of got me thinking, and I got this vision of people moving to Canada because the U.S. has gotten too oppressive, and they want to start a new life in Canada. And I literally, they just came to me, this family moving to Canada, and they're using a horse and buggy to get there. And I just started thinking, how would that happen? Why horse and buggy? Why are they going to Canada? And I just sat down and started writing, and it all came together. And the interesting thing is that it did not, these characters are in the book, but the particular chapter, I kind of started with it as the first chapter, but I ended up cutting it out because I got more interested in other characters that came to me a little bit later. But that's the creative process. So it took me a while because I was just writing in pieces, and I started thinking about different parts of society and how it would all work under these circumstances. Before I knew it, it was 50,000 words, and I thought, wow, I have a novel here.
Well, something I was thinking about too was that in your book, there's an artist, and I did have a couple of, I felt like I was remembering Atlas Shrugged on a certain times, like for instance, your artist is stomped on by the government and not allowed to do his art. And he's one of the ones that moves to Canada. He's the one who's fleeing to Canada for a better life. I think that the left in America does not seem to understand that in a totalitarian government, the way we're headed, that even the artists will be affected. I think that they have some misunderstanding that the very left, the far left, the entertainment set and the Hollywood crowd and the artist crowd, that they will somehow be protected from the left. And historically in totalitarian governments, that's not how it works. And so it was the artist that reminded me of Ayn Rand. And then the second thing that reminded me of the things she used to teach and say was that even in your book, the gay characters have been, they're being persecuted by the government also for being outside the norm. So you have these very typical leftist mindsets, artists in the gay community, that usually are on this progressive socialism, they're on the side of that. But in this book, you are showing how they are also going to get caught up in the total crackdown by the government. Can you explain how that happens in a totalitarian society? How do those two, these that are traditionally very progressive, traditionally very left, how do they get caught up in it too? I think they think they're protected. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I'm so glad you picked up on it, because one of the downsides of being from a totalitarian society, some of the things are so obvious to me, I almost don't feel the need to explain. And one of my beta readers, when she saw that part about the two gay women who were fired from teaching positions, and she said, how on earth would that happen? That wouldn't happen. And my first answer was, that's because it happens all the time. Every totalitarian society you can think of, they crack down on gays. And interestingly enough, the Soviet Union, it was definitely not religiously motivated. It was just because gays are different. And people who are different, especially in something like the sexual preferences, it's such a challenge to the norms. And what else could they be different about? If they are different on this, then would they conform to everything else?
Right, they're like a natural rebel, right? They're natural rebels, and government.
It's such a basic thing.
Yeah, all powerful governments don't want rebels of any kind.
Yeah, exactly. And with things like minorities, it's funny. I was just having a conversation on Facebook about other minorities, like I'm Jewish, and kind of the same thing. Minorities always think that a stronger government would somehow make everybody equal and protect them. But in the end, a stronger government wants everyone to be the same. So if you start standing out in any way, you will, they will hammer down on every nail sooner or later. And I had to expand that particular section to explain how it happens, especially with gay people. It kind of happens subtly because the laws were already in place that, oh yeah, sure, you can get married, and guess what? You're now registered. So everybody knows you're gay.
Right.
And it's, even though technically they were still equal, but these little edicts started coming out and saying, no, maybe we don't want people who are outside the norm. Maybe we don't want them teaching. Maybe we don't want them somewhere where they can influence people, not so much with their sexuality, but with other different ideas they might have. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with artists. Obviously, the first thing that the totalitarians have to control is art. because art bypasses, in a way, bypasses our intellectual defenses. Because you can get to someone through a picture or through a story or through a piece of music that will affect them, and there's no way the government can control that.
I think it's amazing. You know what I think is amazing is that the only other person I've heard expound on that is Ayn Rand, the only other person. And of course, she escaped Russia at a time, she escaped the Soviet Union at a very war-torn time when the Bolshevik Revolution, and her family made it out, or she barely made it out alive. And I almost feel like people who come from the Soviet Union or communist China or places where communism has been, very entrenched, are the only people who understand how important things like art really are, and and what it means to people, and what it means as far as, like, for instance, we talk all the time about on the CFLA page about the cultural influence, right? About how do we influence the culture through art? Because there are a bunch of us who do realize art is very important, and it's not just pretty paintings on a wall, but it is, everything flows downward from the culture, so everything, entertainment, art. And when you have these leftists that take it over, that make everything ugly, and that nothing is beautiful anymore, and that we are told that our own feelings on the subject don't mean anything, that I look at a painting that I think looks like it was done by a kindergartner, and I say, that looks like it was done by my kindergartner, and the establishment says, oh no, it's the best thing we've ever seen. It completely blows Van Gogh out of the water. And there's a bunch of us that go, what? Because I think they do it purposefully. They do it purposefully to destroy our reality of what is beauty, what is art. And why do they do that, Marina? There's a reason for it, isn't there?
Well, the best art is rooted in truth. And when you want to distort reality, then you have to change your definition of what is good art to fit your perverted reality, if you will.
Distorted reality is a really good way to put it. They're trying to distort reality. They're constantly trying to distort our reality by changing words in our dictionaries, by changing the meanings of things, by only using certain words that have psychological impact, and changing our definitions, and changing what we feel is beautiful, or giving us music that is terrible. That it's just, I just don't hear a lot of people talking about that. And so I was really interested in that part of your book. I was interested that you made it a point to have the artist be a character and his and being persecuted for his art. And I just thought that was really great. And I think more people ought to be talking about it, because I think we are in a period of distortion.
That's right. And again, it's one of those things that happens every time. If you look historically at totalitarian societies, they all have their own artists who produce. They produce propaganda, but some of them can be really talented people, and it really, really works. It reaches people better than any other kinds of blatant propaganda. Because when you put something in a story, or you put something in a painting, then it affects people much more on a subconscious level.
Well, look,
you have to really be watching out to see what the artist is doing if you're aware of it.
Hey, look at how
what's going on. If you don't.
Yeah, I mean, look at how talented the artists are that did the propaganda for the Obama Hope posters. There was certainly talent in those posters. The artist was certainly very talented, and it was beautiful to look at. and it did what it was supposed to do, you know, and it made people partial to him. It made people love him. And I think that you're right. The talent, it's not that the talent's not there. I mean, look at Hollywood. Hollywood has tons of talent, but they use it for, you know, terrible means, and they use it to spread untruths. So, and you're right, it's powerful. And anyone who says that movies or games or books don't have an effect on people is crazy, because it absolutely has. It affects people on their daily lives. Let me ask you, so this book took you about like 2 years to write, is that correct?
Altogether, like I said, it took me about a year to write 50,000 words. It ended up being a little over 70,000 words, because I gave some of my characters more of a backstory, and I had to plug up some plot holes. You probably know how it happened. So the second year was all revisions and expansion and agonizing and sending it to yet another beta reader just to make sure. And the cover design, everything takes a lot of time, because, you know, I do have a life and a day job, and I don't have to tell you what kids do to your time. And
you don't have to tell me. I know. Look at the mess behind me. I mean,
yeah, it was pretty much 2 years start to finish. It could have gone faster, but it was also, you know, with the first novel, there's also the self-doubt and how far should I take it? How long should it be? Should I just make it into a short story and put it on some website and forget about it? But of course, at some point, the character just wouldn't leave me alone until I told the whole story.
So tell me about your writing process. What is your favorite part of it, and what is the least favorite part of writing for you?
The favorite part is when I'm able to really get into the scene and get into the character's head. I learned at some point, it's called deep POV, deep point of view, where you kind of write from the character's point of view. Not first person, but more like from their head, and just see what happens. Like, I really like putting them. Obviously, in the dystopia, it's real easy to put a character in a very difficult situation, just to see what decisions they would make and what they would do and how they would dig themselves out. And sometimes they will completely surprise you and do something entirely different from what you planned to do with them. And sometimes will kind of grow and take on a life of their own. And that's really the best part, just dealing with the characters. The best part and kind of a frustrating part too. And you want them to say something, if you will, they don't say it. They refuse to say it. Like someone said, it's almost like having children.
And what's the worst part for you?
I guess the most boring part is editing. There is no way around it. Editing has to be done. I've read it over, I don't remember how many times. I had the setup on the computer where the computer read it back to me. And then getting all the feedback from the beta readers and deciding what to take, what to leave. That's usually difficult. Thankfully, my beta readers were all great. I couldn't have asked for a better stable of beta readers. Again, thanks to the Facebook group. They were all wonderful. But just putting it all together, that can sometimes get frustrating.
Yeah, I can't believe how many times we had to read our book. I mean, unfortunately, my book is like 600 pages, and we had to read it like 13 times, and it was absolutely brutal. But you know, what's fun is, because I don't think I could ever read it again because I've read it so many times. But what's fun is when people who've never read it then get to tell me, oh, I'm on this chapter and I'm laughing so hard and I love this one. And, you know, it's great for me to see it through other people's eyes, because at some point you just get blinded by it. You know?
Yeah, you know it so well, you know, every passage by heart. But then sometimes there are parts that, not that I forgot that I wrote them, but I didn't think they were that important at the time, but people react to them. Like I have one minor character, he's only in one chapter, he's a paraplegic, and I had several reviewers said that, oh, this was such a great character, such interesting scenes, and even my husband said, you know, if you ever do a spin-off, you should probably be the one. And it was almost an afterthought to put him in. It served the plot, but that was about it. But sometimes it just happens, and it's not until I started getting feedback from the readers that I realized, hey, I have something here that's more than just a little plot device.
Well, so what are you working on? What are you working on now? Do you have anything new coming up? Are you working on another book?
I have something I'm working on. It will probably just be a novella, because it's a little bit of a gimmick. It's a little bit, I guess it's called high concept nowadays, when it's just kind of a what if idea. It's also a dystopian setup. So I am trying to decide what to do with it right now. But
have you always written? Have you always been a writer? As far as, you know, I know this is your first book that you published, but have you written other things? And, you know, how did you get into writing?
No fiction. I've never written fiction. I've written a lot of reviews, book reviews, because I love to read. So I spent a lot of time on Goodreads. I actually started out before we started this group on Facebook. I started my group on Goodreads because I just found, I don't know if you've ever been to Goodreads, if you spent any time.
I just signed up. I didn't know about it. I'm late to the party for everything, I swear.
It's a very progressive place, liberal progressive place.
Okay.
So I went into a couple of groups. I went into a fantasy group. I love fantasy, and I always thought, you know, fantasy sci-fi should naturally be libertarian, because it's all about imagination and freedom and going to explore different worlds. And oh my gosh, what did I find there? So at some point I said, you know what, how about I start my own group and I invite some people and we'll see what develops. So I made up a small government book fan club, and it just kind of started growing slowly. And then eventually through that, that's how I met Kia, and then we decided to go on Facebook. But that's why also I started meeting with authors, and I found out, oh, there is this thing called independent publishing. So I started reading. People started sending me manuscripts for beta reading. So it was just a really exciting time, and I guess like what's called caught the bug. And it got to my head, and I said, hey, I can write something. Especially one thing about writing flash fiction, which was the first thing that I wrote for Liberty Island, is you're limited in space. So you don't have to have this overwhelming thing where, oh my gosh, how would I ever write a novel? Because you have only a space of under 1,000 words. So it's kind of an easy way to start. And then I found out after the fact that most people start with writing shorts and then they move on to novels.
If anybody wanted to find your Goodreads group, what is it called on Goodreads so they could join?
It's a Small Government Book Fan Club.
Okay, cool. And then you said something about the sci-fi books the sci-fi and fantasy that I want to ask you about. I know a little bit about what you guys are always talking about on CFLA, because I've the sad puppies thing. I've kind of tried to keep up. I've kind of tried to keep up, but I'm a novice because I don't read sci-fi. I'm not a sci-fi fan. However, I will agree with you 100% that it seems like the sci-fi genre in general, sci-fi and fantasy genre, ought to be, full of libertarians, right? In fact, one of my very favorite shows of all time was not Serenity. That was the movie. What was that? Firefly. Thank you. Firefly. That's one of my favorite shows of all time. And God, was that a raw deal that got canceled, right? But again, Joss Whedon, he keeps claiming that he's not a libertarian. He keeps claiming that he's not. But then he writes these things.
Progressive, but this is where the whole thing comes in, where good art is always rooted in truth. So it's almost like he can't help himself.
He can't help himself. I have said that so many times to people. I don't know if he's in denial about who he is and what he thinks, or if he's hiding who he is and what he thinks because he's in Hollywood. But he can't help himself. He keeps writing truth. That Firefly series is so good, and the movie Serenity is so good, and it's clearly libertarian, clearly conservative.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
There's no way around it. It is about a totalitarian government, and about freedom fighters, and about living under an all-powerful government, and how freedom is best, and how individual freedom matters. And the idea that this guy can't see it just cracks me up. But let's talk about the other sci-fi. These people who have basically taken over the sci-fi genre. It appears that they are these social justice warriors that just want to put gay characters and everything. And for the life of me, can't figure out what is so great about this. Like, now it's like, who can be the weirdest? Who can have the weirdest character? The transgendered, binary, whatever that I don't even know the terms anymore. Cisgendered. I don't even know what it means. But it does apparently, this is the new thing now in all the sci-fi novels and shows. They just want to show as many non-normative sexual characters. And why is that necessary in sci-fi? I mean, shouldn't they just be focused on a good story?
Well, that's the thing. If your story requires that your character is an African-American lesbian, then, more power to you. But they do seem to just stick these ideological pieces into what could otherwise be decent works. Some of those works are completely irredeemable. I mean, some of the stuff you read and it's like, how did this ever win an award? I don't know if you here, we always make fun of this. If You Were a Dinosaur, My Love. It's a short story that is just horror to read. Yeah, so you should read it as punishment because it's just so terrible. And it won a Nebula Award for some unfathomable reason. Basically, like, I guess with any institution, and publishing is just another institution, and at some point it started getting taken over by those social justice warriors and progressives, and they said, well, okay, from now on, every hero has to be a female, and if you have a man, it has to be only a sidekick, because that's another thing they don't understand, and it's another thing that I did in my book, that you can have a strong woman, a heroic woman, but it doesn't need to be the expense of surrounded her with stupid man who needs to be always told what to do, because some of those stories that you see nowadays, that's all it is. It's some kind of feminist fantasy instead of something that's true to life.
Well, and also, if you notice that in every movie now, and I guess these books too, I don't really read sci-fi, so I wouldn't know, but I would for sure know that in the movies anyway, that they're turning in from books, every female character, you know, totally kicks ass. Better than any of the men in any of the movie anywhere. I mean, these things are so unrealistic. At some point, you know, not that a woman can't kick ass, but can we just stop, please? Can we stop pretending that women are just as strong or stronger than men? I mean, I feel like it's an insult to my intelligence when I have to watch Lara Croft or whoever is the new, you know, that's old now, but whoever is the new ass kicker female just taking out man after man after man. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid. And, you know, one thing that's not mentioned, it's a disservice to girls that we give them these ideas that if, God forbid, you're somewhere in a dark alley and you think you can just punch the guy in the nose and he's going to just fall down.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
And they're always complaining
we need to tell people just the truth. Again, things have to be realistic. Like in Star Wars, when you see this little girl out fighting a whole crowd of mercenaries, not just any man, mercenaries, huge guys. She just knocks them all out. You know, it's fun to watch for a while, but you can also know before it starts that she's going to win because she's a girl.
Yeah, right. Well, and you're right about doing a disservice to girls because, I mean, not that all girls believe everything they see in the movies. However, we're so inundated now with this is the narrative that they're pushing. That women are stronger than men, not even equal to men, that women are stronger than men emotionally and now physically. That is just not true. And you're right. I mean, God forbid, let's hope. I mean, everyone's always complaining, all the social justice warriors, about a rape culture. Well, perhaps they should start being honest with women about what is a woman's capability. A physical capability in response to a man's. If they want women to be equal, then they should be out there advocating for women to be carrying weapons, guns. A gun is a great equalizer. The great equalizer, the only equalizer for a woman against a man is a Smith & Wesson 45 caliber. So, you know, this is what they should be talking about. In movies, I prefer women with guns. Because I think that's more realistic and I think that's more truthful. And I don't think that women are ever going to make their mark in the world by fighting men with fists. I mean, that's
right. And, you know, to be honest, we also don't like, in truth, if you put women on screen in a fight, it's unpleasant to see a woman beaten up. It's just unpleasant. It's not something that we're going to pay money to see. I mean, guys, you know, Bruce Willis goes against 10 terrorists and they all fight it out and he comes out in his whatever at the end of Die Hard and, you know, it's all fine. But do you want to see a woman in this situation getting punched and beaten? And
I mean, I find it uncomfortable also. I can suspend my reality and enjoy the movie for what it is, but when it becomes repeated over and over and over again, it just starts to insult my intelligence. That's where I get that's where I get annoyed. Like, okay, enough already. Could we have some reality? I mean, it's fine if it's all fantasy but it's always the same fantasy. It couldn't it be different?
In fantasy, you have so much freedom. You can have women do magic. You don't have to have a woman fighter. One of my favorite series, actually, is Terry Goodkind, Sword of Truth. And there's a male hero who has the Sword of Truth, and he's a warrior. And there is a female who has a magical power. She has power to basically take over a person's mind. So that person becomes basically a personal slave. And it's a huge power. It's a great power, but it's different. And in fantasy group discussions, I see people complain, well, why does he have a sword and she doesn't? And I'm like, are you people serious?
Yeah, I think that's why I like X-Men so much, because the fantasy there is, each one has a different mutation, and each one is different, and they're not super just because they're women or super just because they're men, but they have this special gift, and so each one is different. I find that to be more interesting than, oh, she's just a really super buff FBI agent or something. I don't know.
Right. How many things can you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, but I am getting kind of tired of that trope in Hollywood. It's really getting boring. It's getting very boring that the women are always the strong ones, they're always the heroes, and the men are always stupid.
Right.
And need to be rescued, I enjoyed the new Star Wars very much. I really liked it. A lot of people hated it, especially because there's another, the hero is a woman and we're doing the same thing again. But I really liked it because I really liked the nods to the original, and I just felt like it was the movie I had been waiting for, without those other three that I won't mention because I don't like those at all.
I mean, obviously the bar has been set so low that it met diminished expectations were met. It was fine. It was fun. It's just at this point I'm so attuned to certain things that I was like, oh, okay, here we go.
Well, right, and I do the same thing. I go, oh, here we go again with she's going to kick everybody's ass. We all see it coming, but
there's no suspense. That's
right.
What you take away. You take suspense away, and then it's not a good story anymore.
As soon as I saw her love interest was going to be the pilot guy, or not the pilot guy, the other one, Anyway, as soon as I saw him, I said, "Oh, she's going to rescue him for sure. For sure, he's going to need rescuing, right? Right."
Yeah.
So something else just came to me that I wanted to ask you. What was it? About the groups. Oh, I know. Okay, so you had found out about self-publishing, about indie publishing through the Goodreads group. And one of the things that I'm sure you discovered through talking to those people, and because I have spoken to many of them also, is that they are facing a certain type of censorship from publishing houses because of their libertarian views or conservative views that they put in their books. Now, what's interesting to me about this is that I read a lot of books, especially young adult novels, and I cannot tell you how much political messaging are in these books. I mean, very heavy-handed political messaging. Pro-abortion, pro-divorce, pro-gay marriage, pro-gay family, or anti-gun, pro-veganism. These are just for real. I mean, it's just, you can't even believe it. It's so stupid, right? But it's so heavy-handed. Planned Parenthood even shows up in some of these novels where, one girl will have a pregnancy scare, and so they go to Planned Parenthood to see what it's like, and everyone there is so nice to them, and it's just so wonderful. It's not at all what they heard. Anti-religion, anti-family, there's just very heavy-handed messages. But here we have people in the CFLA group who have written stories, fantasy stories, sci-fi stories that are full of action and adventure, and they happen to have a pro-freedom message that isn't heavy at all, that is just barely there.
Right.
And they can't get published anywhere because they are told your political messaging is too heavy-handed. I find that to be so insulting. It's just beyond, because you go to any library and just pick books off the shelf, and you will be inundated with every, excuse my language, but every wet dream the left ever had in books, right? They
Yeah,
are.
true.
Every sick fantasy they've ever wanted, they put in these books to give to your teenagers. But we're told that we can't put a book out in a publishing house. I mean, how many people have you run? I know you must have heard about this through speaking to these authors.
Yeah, I actually, on Goodreads, I met an author who reached out to me. He desperately needed editing because he wrote a young adult novel, and his editor quitted him midway once it became obvious that the book had a pro-Christian message.
What?
Yeah. He said, you know, my editor quit, and I just, I couldn't turn him down. I was just so upset about it. So and I love beta reading. I hate line editing. But I did line editing for him just because I could not let it stand. And it was a good story. And I was glad that he was able to publish it.
But what do you think about that? Like, what a terrible reason to turn down an editing job. First of all, have they never heard of C.S. Lewis? Are any of them willing to stand up and say C.S. Lewis's books were crap because he was a Christian? Or J.R.R. Tolkien, for that matter? You know, some of the greatest writers of our time have been Christian people with Christian messages. What a ridiculous thing and anyway.
Yeah, it was really the first time that I heard that somebody was quit, and it didn't even cross my mind that that editor was getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
He turned down money and walked out in the middle of the job.
That's hard to believe, but I know it does happen because they get so emotionally invested in you know their ideology that they can't put it aside. I just had that happen to me the other day. I had to, you know, I have to lose friends and things over these. It was just stupid because I'm the kind of person, I don't care what you believe. If we're friends, it doesn't bother me. And so we can be on the different ends of the political spectrum, and I can still be your friend and still talk to you about your kids. But some people just can't do that, you know. They just can't separate it.
I live in New Jersey, and you are in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of have to adjust to people with different political views. But what I was going to say when you were talking about how our fiction is supposed to be heavy-handed and all these progressive messages is just fine, it's because it's become almost a default. It's become one of those everybody knows things.
Yep.
So, of course, if a girl gets pregnant, then naturally she has an abortion. If
naturally
decides not to, then it's something different and groundbreaking in a way. But so there is like what they consider. I actually had a conversation with someone who was saying how Fox News is like super duper extra right wing, completely intolerable. And I'm thinking, I don't know, not the news division. I mean, Shepard Smith is not right wing, and Chris Wallace is not right wing.
No, not at all.
So I asked, what is your baseline? What is your middle of the road? And she said CNN. So that kind of explains where people are.
Middle of the road.
CNN was middle of the road, and MSNBC was a little bit to the left.
I can't even watch Fox News anymore. I guess that means that I am really far to the right.
Yeah, you're gone.
Fox News is a right-wing news station that I don't know where I'm at on the chart anymore because I feel like they've completely abandoned us.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to find little bits and pieces of information at different places because there's
I've stopped watching TV news totally. I don't think it has anything to offer me. I read my news because I feel that first of all, when you read the news, you have more of an opportunity to to see the facts for yourself without someone interpreting them for you. And then also to check multiple sources I just prefer to read it. I don't, or hear it on the radio. I also feel that radio news is far less biased than, because they have a short amount of time, they got to get you the facts right away within their 2-minute window or 3-minute window or whatever it is. And so they usually stick to the facts. But cable news networks, I think they are the worst things that ever happened to humanity. 24-hour news service is just the worst idea ever because they never have anything to talk about. So they're constantly waiting for the next tragedy, right? And in between the tragedy, they're just making stuff up just to have something to put on the air. And so they're making mountains out of molehills on a regular basis. I'm so sick of it. I can't watch it anymore. None of them.
Yeah, I haven't watched TV news in a long time either because honestly, it's just not worth my time. I guess that's the advantage of being a writer that I can now say, oh, I have something better to spend my time on. Because even when I'm not writing, I'm hanging out with writers. It's just, I just like this whole creative environment rather than just sit there and have some person on TV tell me what to think.
Yeah, I have to really thank you for putting that, for creating that Conservative Libertarian Fiction Alliance group, because I've met some fantastic people in there who I never would have come in contact with otherwise. And what a wonderful resource it is. And you guys have really, how many members are you up to now on the Facebook group?
I think it's over 1,000. It's like 1,116, 15, something like that. Yeah. We have grown recently because we had a book award. So we got a little attention from the usual. We actually got more attention from being criticized by the usual suspects than we could have gotten on our own.
Yeah, right. Tell us about the award. So the CFLA puts out an award now for the best book of the year.
Yeah, we had a book of the year award, and we started collecting the nominations from within the group, just so people could tell us what they liked. And the books with the most nominations, we took the top 10, and we put it up for the public to see, and we shared it everywhere. And we had our winner, Larry Correa, who is actually an excellent writer. He was the original force behind the Set Puppies, actually. So he does get around, and he is somewhat controversial because he is a libertarian and he loves guns. And he's just very outspoken on the internet, and he also writes great books that are not politically correct, and they're hugely entertaining. So because of that,
that's what America wants right now. Nobody wants to be politically correct anymore. People are sick of being politically correct, and they're
so tired of it. Even the liberals, when you talk to young people, none of them, like I talked to my son, all of his friends, most of his friends are liberals. They are like Bernie Sanders supporters. But when I start bringing up things like social justice warriors and political correctness and all of that stuff, he says, "Oh, come on, Mom, nobody likes that. Come on, that's just stupid." And so, well, you'd be surprised, but the young people are beginning to get away from that. And I guess I'm hoping they will come around on the economic side of it once they start working. But at least I can see it's encouraging that so many of them just reject political correctness outright. Say things that probably inappropriate, just to kind of push the limits.
That's good. They should. And I also think that Bernie Sanders supporters, I think there's hope for them. Because I think there's hope for them to see the truth, because I think that mostly they are They're very distrustful of the establishment, which is good. They should be distrustful of the establishment. The establishment has been out to screw all of us for a long time. They're also very distrustful of the big banks and the big corporations, which, let's just be honest, come on, you know, George Bush, the big bank bailout of 2000 and whatever, 11, that was the worst, the absolute worst thing ever that ever happened to this country. I mean, so, and we, you know, I voted for him, which was unfortunate. Maybe that was 2000.
Who did you vote against? I mean, sometimes you have to vote against. I mean,
yeah, I mean, yeah. That'll be the last presidential campaign I ever work on, because I felt very betrayed by that. But so I think the Bernie Sanders people have a lot of the right ideas. It's just that they have this other thing that comes with being young, that they don't understand yet how the world works and how to pay bills.
Yeah, they identify the problems. They just don't see the solutions.
Don't see the solutions. But I think it's a step forward that they see the problems and that they know Hillary Clinton is one of them. And that, to me, is huge. And I think that the Bernie Sanders supporters can be co-opted. I really do. I think that they're going to need some education as far as how things work and how money works, and how you know, why you should be able to keep what you earn. I mean, they need a basic economics lesson, but I think that'll come. I think a lot of it has to do with immaturity and just being, you know, living there. Right now, they're living on their parents. They've never been out there on their own. You know, they're not making it. They're not struggling. They're not doing that thing that you do that makes you grow up. You know, they're in college. College is not the real world.
Yeah. Now they're all gonna go to college and either get ruined or not. I mean, depending on where they go and what crowd they hang out with. I mean, there's college Republicans out there, so it is possible.
Milo Yiannopoulos, I think that's
he's my hero.
Milo's doing his Dangerous Faggot tour that's happening this September across college campuses, you know, nationwide, which is really fun. And I hope he reaches some of those Bernie Sanders supporters and doesn't hurt their feelings too badly.
Yeah, some of those feelings should be hurt. I mean, this is, you know, he's so right, because this is the age, and college is really the place where you should be challenging ideas, and you should be having honest conversations and disturbing conversations. And that's where you have all these dirty jokes and all the stuff that, you know, crusty old ladies may not like anymore. But, you know, it's a phase.
Well, there should be no safe space in a free society. There is no safe space from ideas. And when we start teaching our kids that they deserve to be safe from ideas, we're doing them a disservice. And those college students, people like Milo, who are challenging those students to come out from their safe space and enter the real world of ideas, you know, need to be applauded. What he's doing is really necessary right now to wake up this culture. Words are not going to hurt you. What will hurt you is not listening to other ideas and not being open to what other people have to say, and closing yourself off to other ideas, which is so important. Why the CFLA alliance that you have, that the Conservative Libertarian Fiction Alliance, so important that this exists. It's so important that these people have a voice in this culture and are writing novels and wonderful books and stories for people to read, so that those unpopular ideas get out there. We need more of that, not less. We need more challenging things. And this is what's so great about your book, and what's so great about what you've done with the CFLA, is because we need more of this in America. We need more conversation. When they talk about conversation, this really is it. It's about opening yourself up to unpopular and maybe even uncomfortable discussions, yes?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where freedom shows. Either you're free to talk about things that are unpopular, or it's all really fake, because it's like some colleges now have free speech areas where you can hold protest signs, but people who don't like it can, I guess, avoid those areas. I'm not even sure how it works.
That's so crazy. That's so nuts. The whole country is a free speech.
And you call it free speech areas. Do they even see themselves? If I put it in my book, people would say it's unrealistic.
Yeah, right. They'd be like,
you have to make an effort to make it realistic. You can't put some of the stuff that happens in real life. You can't put it in.
I know, right? It's because it feels like we're living in a particularly bad article in The Onion.
That's right. I mean, how often do you see something from The Onion, or you see something from a website you don't know, and you think, is it The Onion? Is it the satire website? It could be either way.
I know. You can't tell anymore because we're surrounded by so much absurdity. You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for being on today. I think we've covered everything I wanted to ask you about. Is there anything that that I missed that you'd like your readers to know? Or the book is available on Amazon. You can get it in paperback and also on e-reader. I believe it's on sale for $2.99 on the Kindle. And it's called Chasing Freedom by Marina Fontaine. Marina, is there anything else you would like your readers to know?
I would like to plug my blog, if I might.
Sure.
It's called Marina's Musings, and it's marinafontaine.blogspot.com. I mostly try to stick to cultural things. Once in a while, politics creeps through. I wrote about censorship on Facebook and Twitter. They're still going through the whole banning and purging. It's still going on, but I wrote about that some time ago. I wrote about female characters. I wrote about basically some of the thoughts on the culture in society more than politics. So if people want to see a little bit more of me, they can go there. I am on Twitter as at MashaK99. I don't tweet a whole lot just because there are only so many hours in the day. And I pretty much, other than that, I just live on Facebook. I still pop into my Goodreads group because there are some very nice people there. Who some of them just refuse to go on Facebook. Not that I can blame them because it's a huge black hole of time. It eats time.
Sure does.
So I do get around in different places because I figure this is why I got my original inspiration. I got it all from my friends online. And this is the support network that I have. I really appreciate having it.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. And Chasing Freedom is a really great book, and you guys need to go and get it right now on Amazon. It's worth your time, and especially to support indie authors who, you know, are being ignored by the big publishers. And you know, if you want to, it's like buying locally. You know, it's kind of like the same thing, supporting your local grocer instead of, you know, a Costco. So go on to Amazon.com and find Chasing Freedom. And thank you, Marina Fontaine, for being here with us. And we will talk to you all later. Have a good night.